with Mike Ralston from Blencowe Resources. Mike, morning.
Morning, Andrew, and good to be back, and Merry New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you also. Mike, for investors perhaps new to Blencowe for 2025, give us a recap on the company.
Yeah, Blencowe is a London-listed company. We own 100% of the Orom-Cross Graphite Project in Uganda. It's a sensational graphite project in that it's got size and scale, 2 to 3 billion tons, most of it near to the surface, so a very low cost to get it out. And a 21-year mining license in place already. We've been developing it for nearly 5 years now, a couple of drill programs. In fact, we've got one about to start, but we are in the latter stages of a definitive feasibility study, which we hope to complete in the first half of this year. And then we'll be moving forward to the decision to mine. So it's a great project in a great market, which we think has got a lot of future going forward.
And compared to its graphite peers, what do you reckon makes Orom-Cross stand out?
Well, over the years, as we've done our work and developed through several studies and obviously done work through the off-takers that we're going to be selling product into, we've realized that there are a couple of key factors that matter specifically in the graphite sector. The first of which is low operating costs. Now, that's true of all mining projects, but very much so in graphite, where some of the margins, particularly for the small flake concentrate, are very low. So to have a low operating cost is absolutely critical, and we have one of the lowest operating costs at Orom-Cross. The second standout feature for me is capital costs. Again, raising money in this particular space is difficult to set up and get the project into commercial scale production. And so having a huge, big capital expenditure mainly for infrastructure to bring power and roads and other key infrastructure into play is a problem, not only in terms of raising it, but in terms of servicing it off low margins as well. So we have one of the lowest capital cost projects in terms of graphite in the world, mainly due to the fact that we actually have all the infrastructure in place near to Orom-Cross already. And then the final piece of the puzzle is purity of end product. If you have low purity, once you've taken up to a concentrate or further up to the SPG, you'll sell it, but you'll get a very low price for it. And they'll use it as a filler to blend with other graphite. But we have one of the highest purity projects and products in the market, and it's been very well received by all of the parties, OEMs doing the test work. So we feature on all of these three key essential requirements, whereas I don't think many of our peers do. In fact, most of them will have one or maybe two, but certainly not three. So that's a very good starting point. There's other factors, obviously, that matter beyond that. But I think in terms of making it stand out against peers, this is what really counts for me in terms of Orom-Cross.
We've got China threatening retaliation on certain minerals. Purified graphite is high up on that list. How do you reckon any potential tariffs could impact Blencowe and Orom-Cross?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And I guess I don't have all the answers. I can only share my thoughts. It's pretty clear that as the West decides it's going to throw tariffs at China, China thinks very carefully about where it can retaliate and create the most pain, both tactically and strategically. And as China produces around about 95 to 98% of all of the purified graphite, that is when it goes beyond a concentrate into the purified product that goes into the batteries. As it produces most of that, it has a very strong stranglehold, I guess, in terms of its ability to turn off the taps and create some pressure and ultimately some chaos, I guess, if it really follows through and does it. So far, the threats have not yet been followed through, and so graphite still flows into world markets, but this can easily change. And I think we're going to see a fairly roller coaster ride going forward, after the 20th of January when Trump comes in. And this could have some serious impact in terms of what goes on in graphite markets. Not so much, I guess, for us because we're not in production right this minute, but definitely in terms of where the OEMs, the big users, the parties that have invested billions in building factories and in building facilities and plants to ultimately create batteries and other graphite applications. So they are going to be looking very carefully at this situation and taking a good look at their supply chains and obviously If supply is coming out of China, they will be considering where they may be able to get supply from outside of China going forward. And as a project that's hopefully going to be going into production quite soon, and with a downstream um, further beneficiation strategy in play for us, we think that we can get ourselves really into and on the radar and into people's minds going forward. So I think it's going to be a very interesting year for us, for graphite, and I guess for the market as a whole. And we obviously want to be moving ourselves as closely forward towards production as we can as this develops.
Hmm. And what else, Mike, are you looking out for this year as far as the wider graphite market?
Well, I think one of the things we've noticed is that some of our peers who haven't got those key essentials, which I mentioned earlier, or haven't done their necessary prep work in terms of getting pre-qualified before they start their production strategy, run into some serious difficulties. And I believe that, and I've said this many times before, that there's going to be a real lack of new graphite entrants into the supply side of this particular market. And yet there is still a continued demand that's growing. Yes, there's a slight stagnation in terms of Western demand for EVs at the moment, but China in particular is going absolutely crazy. And as that accounts for 80–90% of the market, you can appreciate that that means a lot more than the West slowing down, which is only accounts for a very small percentage. So the demand is rising, supply is blocked, and I don't see it unblocking because most of these projects are blocked for very significant reasons. As I mentioned before, either high costs or lack of purity. So at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a demand supply imbalance that starts to happen. It's been talked of for a long time by some of the key forecasting or key analysts, but I think it's going to happen. And again, if we can be in production or near to production when this starts to occur, it's going to play into our hands.
So, key objectives, Mike, for the first half of this year, what are you working on?
Well, the most important thing for us is to complete this definitive feasibility study. We've talked about the middle of the year, and the main reason for that timing is that we're kicking off on a final drilling program next week, in fact. All the prep work was done in December. The rigs are arriving next week. The work is going to be done. It obviously takes time to drill it out 7,000 meters, and then you've ultimately got to get assays and then ultimately a revised JORC resource. So it does take time. But once that's completed, it all flows through into our modeling for the DFS. At the same time, we're going to be doing a lot of work in terms of the downstream processing facility and the study on that. We've got a joint venture that we're putting in place for that. We've got a lot of work going on with OEMs in terms of offtake agreements. It takes time. They're very slow, but they're methodical because they're doing a lot of sample testing. They're doing their own internal evaluation. So I guess it's all around offtake agreements with OEMs, completing our DFS and completing this drilling program, and then setting ourselves up with funding opportunities and funding partners for the next step, which is obviously moving towards production. So busy time, but I think it's going to be very fruitful. And I think this DFS completion is a big inflection point for value for the company. So we obviously want to get it right. We're going to make sure we get it right. And that takes a little bit of time, and it has taken a bit longer than we expected, but we have got a different strategy that's involving this downstream processing, and obviously bringing that in is going to be game changing. So it's going to work out for the best in the end. And yeah, that's all the work that we're going to be doing going forward now.
And so kicking off the new year, Mike, with a market cap around 11, 12 million pounds, you must see some value in your shares.
There hasn't been a lot of love in graphite over the last couple of years, and part of that is to do with our peers in particular having hit some big hurdles and some of them having fallen over. I get that. But at the end of the day, there is still a huge market. And there, as I said earlier, there's going to be a lack of new suppliers or new mines coming into production, and that provides a huge opportunity for us going forward. And I think that our market cap is ridiculously low based on the size and scale of the project, key attributes that it's got, and some of the relationships and strategies that we have in place. So, it's our job to go about trying to change that, not just on the ground in terms of the project, but to ultimately educate the market in terms of what we've got and why we're different, and keep scoring, keep hitting goals, and make sure that the market can see that we are, different, and we are going to succeed and we are going to perform. Because at the end of the day, that's what it wants to see. And I think the UK market's crying out for a successful graphite company, and we aim to be that.
Great to see you, Mike. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks again for having me.